So, we're in week 5. And we're talking about a way of life that works. And what that means is we can't just start anywhere if we want something to change in our life. We have to start in the place that is going to end up being the most effective place we can. And that's what we've been doing in the last 4 weeks, talking about the most effective way of building for ourselves a foundation. And this whole last month has been about what choice we're going to make about who it is we think we are. And it seems like we have 2 choices. But actually, we only have one, because what we have learned in the last month is that it's a choiceless choice. If we follow the choice of the broken ego, if we follow the choice of the son of the shepherd, if we follow the choice of being a wave in the ocean instead of being the ocean, instead of being the son of a king, instead of being the great I am that we actually truly are and were born to be, we're making the choice to live the smaller story. We're making the choice to live in the problems. We're making the choice to be a victim of circumstance, and that's a very hard life, and it is filled with suffering, and it is filled with anxiety. We don't really have a choice. There comes a point in our life where we have to choose which direction we are going to go in, who we are. It is singly the most important decision we make. The great teacher Ernest Holmes said, the thing you have to be able to answer in your life is, who am I? There isn't a more important question than, who am I? He would say, I'd walk down the street. He did this every day. And he would stop at different points of the day. And this after he'd been teaching, after he founded an entire spiritual school and a movement, and stop himself walking down the street and say, who am I? And he wasn't looking for the answer of, I am my clothes, I am the son of my parents. He wanted the answer that came from the deepest place inside of him, because man, when you can answer that question rightly and know who you are, you walk out into the world different. Different. And the world responds to you different. Different. So there was a man who went to a sage, full of suffering, full of trouble, and some of us are. Maybe not all the time, but we reach places in our life where we're full of suffering, full of trouble. He goes to the sage, and he says to him, I need help. Can you help me? My life is full of trouble, and I am full of suffering. And it was written in the lines in his face. And the sage looked at him kindly and said, I'll give you a choice. Do you want a map or do you want a boat? And the man looked around, because there were a lot of other people around. He looked around, because the first thing we want to do is ask somebody what we should do. You know, just tell me what you want, a map or a boat, a map. He didn't even know what that meant, a map or a boat. And he looked around, and everybody was filled with as much trouble and as much suffering as him. So there was nobody there that was going to help him know what he should choose. So he chose, and he said, I'll choose the boat. And the sage looked at him and kissed him on the forehead. And he said, go then. You are the boat, and life is the ocean. Right. You can hear a pin drop in the room. I don't know if that's a good thing. You know, maybe I picked the wrong story, but I don't think so. We are the boat until we know who we are and decide who we are. Until we make a decision, because most of us are who our parents raised us to be. Most of us is what the world tells us we are. You're not going to open the Wall Street Journal. You're not going to open New York Times. You're not going to look at Reuters every day and it's telling you, look for who it is it says you are. Because if you look to the world's going to tell you are one among the 10,000 things. A victim of circumstance. You know, shit happens, and hopefully it doesn't happen to you today. Or you're going to take your life into your own hands, and you're going to go a little bit deeper, and you're going to go backwards in time to some of the teachings that have always spoken about this issue. This isn't an issue that's being spoken about now because Anthony Robbins is part of the self-empowerment movement or because this is a time for self-improvement. This talk was happening back in the East before any Bible was written. The same conversation was going on. Who are you? Not who do you want to be? That's a different conversation. Who are you? The nature of you. And I think about a woman who landed in a place. And we all land in places. Life happens. Life happens. It just happens. Knowing who you are doesn't mean life's not going to happen. It means when life happens, as it does to everybody, and moves us forward into the next right place we need to be in. When life happens, we know how to hold it. So she's walking home. She goes through her vestibule, comes in her front door to her apartment building in New York, comes home, walks through the vestibule, gets her mail, is about to walk up the steps to her apartment. A guy walks in, big old guy walks in, who she clearly knew because it was a small apartment building, was not part of anybody she'd ever seen. She'd never seen this guy. And she got that vibe, that sinking feeling in your stomach, and it all happened so fast. And he knocked her down. He took her purse, and he stood over her in that minute. And in that minute, that moment, I should say, that instant, she's on the ground, crouching against the wall, trembling. And here she is. Why do these things happen to me? And you know that's her first thought. And that is her first thought. Maybe that's our first thought. Why do these things have to happen to me? What am I being punished for? First thoughts that go through the mind if we don't know any better. There was a woman who, with her husband, who was a sailor. How fabulous is that to meet a guy? When do you meet a guy who's a sailor? He's really a sailor. And he had his own big, beautiful sailboat. And they used to go sailing. And one weekend they went sailing in the Caribbean. I knew her first, then I knew him, then I knew them both because I married them. So then I got to know them very well. Married them in Connecticut. And they went on a sailing trip in the Caribbean. And they hit an unexpected storm. It happens. No matter how good of a sailor you are, sometimes a storm comes up. Boom, you're in the middle of it. And she was down in the hull. So you have the main deck. The hull is underneath the main deck. And you have maybe a couple little tiny portholes that you can see out of, but basically you can't see anything. You're in the hull. And there's the little kitchen, and there are the little bunk beds, and the sailboat is being tossed. It was a nasty storm, so pitching back and forth. There's her cousin, there's a friend, and they are being thrown every which way, just violently seasick in the storm. And the husband is up sailing the boat up on the main deck. Now, why I mention this is because sailors, when they come aboard ships, the experienced sailors take them aside when they see that they're seasick. And they find them usually seasick, moaning in their beds in the hull, downstairs in the hull, just miserable, huddling, green, white, huddling down in the hull. And the first thing an experienced sailor will tell you is get upstairs on the main deck. Go up to the deck. Not because your seasickness is going to feel better on deck, but something psychologically is going to change up the vibe. You're going to go up on deck And you're going to be able to see amidst the storm a horizon. You're going to be able to see up on deck a bigger picture. You're going to be able to see something more than how sick you feel, vomiting and puking and feeling so sick with the pots and pans clanging around you and everything in commotion. You're going to see something more than that. You're going to see a bigger picture. And the experienced sailors know that when they bring a young sailor up on the main deck, he's going to have a better time of it and be able to make it through because he can see the bigger picture. It looked for all the world that this girl was sitting, huddling in a vestibule, and who wouldn't be? The bigger picture, right? Where if we're huddling in the hull, crouching in the hull, all we can see is, look what happened to me. I can't believe this. This is horrible. Oh my God. Absolutely. That's all you see because that's what's here. When you know who you are, it changes everything. It doesn't say that something like this won't happen. It doesn't say that. What it says is, when you are crouching in the hull, knowing who you are, there's going to be a part of your nature that is going to call to you from within you. And it's going to call from within you to go up on deck. It's going to call from within you when you know who you are, that largeness, that greatness. When the Tao Te Ching says, and we've talked about this, hold fast to the power of one. Hold fast, it says, to the great form. Hold fast. Let's put it in English instead of in Taoist terms. Hold fast to the great idea. That's what great form means, the great idea. What is the great idea? The great idea is who we are. The great idea isn't the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? The great idea isn't the great president and the great leader or leaders. The greatness that we need to hold to is the greatness that we come to learn and understand and practice that is me. Because when I understand the greatness of who I am, I myself have been prepared for this moment of crouching on the ground. And this looks like her story, but I tell you, it's not her story, it's our story. Have you ever found yourself crouching in the ground, huddled in the hull, in the middle of a storm, trembling that somebody's got to save you? We have a whole world that believes the Messiah is coming to save us and living for that moment. What's going to save us, and another word for save is free. I like the word emancipation far more than I like the word salvation. Because we don't need to be saved. We need to be set free so that we can remember who we are and that everything we are is going to encompass everything we need in each moment. We already have it, but we only have it when we can answer the question, after having asked it 100 different ways, who am I? And depending on who we choose, what we choose, it is going to determine the story that's going to be written. It'll determine moments like this in your story. Crouched and huddled in the vestibule. She says these words, damn it, she says. How many times have I found myself in my life crouching before people, crouching before my family who doesn't accept me the way I am, crouching before my boss who doesn't respect me, crouching before the world and all the bad things that can happen to me. She said in that moment what flashed through her eyes was not her life. What flashed through her eyes was the realization that she has spent the majority of her life crouching. See, going up on deck, when we bring ourselves up on deck, When we remember who we are, we remember that the solution to the problem, the answer to the question, we have been prepared for, and where will we find it? We will find it right in ourselves. We're not going to find it anywhere else. That Savior is not coming. It's not coming. It's not coming. He's not coming. She's not coming. It's not coming. Not coming. And once we let that illusion go, what we're left with is our self. The great within. And this withinness that houses a greatness within us and beyond us. This is what we were given to manage our lives, to fulfill our destinies, to live the way we need to live, to do what we need to do, to become the people we need to become, everything that is needed, like the flower in the seed, is given to us if we know what dwells within us. And it's hard because we have another voice within us, a little bit louder than the still small voice that says, oh, please, what are you talking about? That's ridiculous. You'll never be able to do that. You're too old. You're too fat. You're too big. You're too black. You're too this. You're too that. You're too young. You're too that. You're too life's too this. People are too that. Your parents are too this. The work is too that. Broadway producer too this. Restaurant business is too that. I mean, it is endless. This voice, and this is the voice that we talked about last week that tells us we're the son of a shepherd. This is the voice that is the broken ego that shows us a broken world and shows us our own brokenness at every turn. And when we follow that voice, where can we end up except crouching in a vestibule, hoping, powerless, that somebody won't hurt us? Right? That's survival. And please know the definition of the word surviving and thriving are two very different words. Surviving means to exist, meaning keep on living, keep on getting by despite accident or injury. So you're walking through your day, bobbing and weaving. Okay, don't get mad at me. Oh, I hope you still like me. Oh, I hope I'm still your friend. Oh, don't do that. Oh, don't say that. I shouldn't have said that. You're going through your day on your tiptoes, on your eggshells. Because something might happen. You are surviving despite accident or injury, and you want to be a moving target so nobody can actually hurt you. Right? It's so true. The difference is thriving. Thriving doesn't look anything like surviving. Thriving means to grow, and that's not the end of the definition. Thriving means to grow vigorously, right? You're not only growing, you are growing with vigor. You're growing with juice. You're growing in knowing. You are growing in the ways in which a person like you must grow or be grown in order to move forward, and no step is wasted on that path. The Bhagavad Gita says not one step is wasted on our path. It's to grow vigorously. And that part of our nature knows that huddling down in the hull of the boat that we are, the boat that we are, is going to land us in the smallest place looking out at the world through a porthole. If you've ever been on a boat or ship, you know. And I went on a cruise ship. The little portholes are still little. They're very, very little. They're pretty. They're brass. It's really nice. But all you're going to see is this small little point of view about what the world is. And suddenly you're seeing a small world, and suddenly you've become small. Your dreams are small. Your wishes are small. Your prayers are small. Your thoughts are small. Right? What do they say the difference is between people? Small people talk about people. They talk about things and people. Great people talk about ideas. Hold fast to the great idea of who you are. And what will happen is you don't need to wait for a Savior to come and save you. You need to develop the muscle that allows you to remember who you are every day, not in crisis, every day, not just when stuff like this happens, every day. Because when you remember it every day, you know you've been prepared for whatever is brought to you in the day. That what is brought to you, you know is brought to you to grow you. And if you do it from on deck, man, if you do it from on deck, it's going to be a totally different experience than if you do it crouching and crawling out of that experience and calling everybody you know to say, I'm freaking moving out of New York. Right? Isn't that the first thing? We can't live in a place like that. Hold fast to the great form. Hold fast to the great form and let things change as they may. Means when a person holds fast to the great form, according to the Tao Te Ching, when you hold fast to the great idea of who you are, that great idea becomes who you are in all your actions, and what is needed comes to you. It is the original law of attraction, written thousands of years before Rhonda Byrne had the fabulous idea to write The Secret and talk about it. It was a good book, but she didn't invent that law. Hold fast to the great form, and it says you will walk in this world without danger. Now, what does it mean? Wasn't she in danger? Didn't that happen? Yeah, but look at the difference. She was called. There's an old Japanese line from a poem. Wait with me. Pray with me. Pray with me. Let's see. I have to open the book. I like to carry it and hold it because it makes me feel very secure when I get nervous, but I don't like actually looking at it unless I have to. Wrapped, that's the word I couldn't get. Wrapped within young leaves. You will love this. Wrapped within young leaves is the sound of water. Now, what does it have to do with you? Everything. Wrapped within young leaves is the sound of water. That which the young leaf needs is already within itself before it even unfurled itself. It is an invitation for it to open to that which it needs and wants, that life needs and wants to give it. See, we think we're different because we think we're human nature. Oh, totally different than nature. It's the same thing. When we say, I have such love in my heart and I just wish I had somebody to give it to, we need to understand that for God's sakes, wrapped within the young leaves, wrapped within the young leaves is the sound of water. If in your heart is the desire for love, then that desire for love is felt by life, and the desire for love was put in your heart by life. And it calls to you to unfurl yourself, to open your heart and let that love out so that that love that comes out of you can be met by the love that will, by law, find its way back to you. The sound of water is already in the leaf. In us is the knowledge of how to handle a situation like that. And we have two choices depending on who we're going to follow. If we follow the knowledge that we are the boat and the ocean is our life. Or last week, 2 weeks ago, we talked about we are a wave in the ocean, but we are the ocean expressing as the wave. That is a very different thing than we are a separate, solitary wave on our own trying to figure it out. In that moment, she went up on deck. That's why we need to know who we are. That's why we need to practice knowing who we are, because we walk out into the world and we forget instantly. Walk out into the world, we could have our wonderful time in the morning, say, yes, I know who I am. Yes, I got it. I know who I am. And affirm it, right? And we walk right out the door. Something pisses us off, right? then we're just there with everybody else doing our thing. We forget it that instant. It is something we need to practice remembering. Why? Because it's true. It's entirely and absolutely and unequivocally not a single exception. The greatness of who you are is who you are. And we can walk around pretending that we're not. We can insist on doing it. And then we crawl away from that situation. Or we remember who we are, and this is the reason we remember. This is the reason we study. This is the reason we practice. This is the reason we spend a little time being silent. Because in moments like that, knowing that we have been prepared for this moment, just like wrapped in young leaves is the sound of water. We've already been given everything we need. We already have everything we need. In that moment, she did something amazing. She's crouching in the vestibule, and she herself, that great I am, that we are, that she is, pulled her up on the top deck out of the hole, because in the hole all you see is your problem, man. All you feel is sick to your stomach about your problems. That's all you can see. Up on deck, you can see the horizon. Up on deck, you can see the eternal picture. Up on deck, 360 degrees in the water, you can see something bigger than the picture that is happening. And what she saw was, I spent my whole life crouching, no more. She'd had it. This was it. This is the last time she said, I'm going to find myself crouching on the floor. And she could only have seen that bigger picture from up on deck. Up on deck, she picked herself up and she did something absolutely crazy and atypical of her. And do not try this at home, right? What she did was go out the door after him, screaming. Now, that is not advice for anybody except her, because that was the right and appropriate action for her. Instead of running from that which she feared, she ran toward it. Symbolically, it was absolutely brilliant. She needed to do that. It might be, the police might tell you it's the worst thing, never, ever, ever, ever do that. But for her, up on deck, she knew there was an action she needed to take. So this was the last time she was ever going to be crouching before anybody for any reason. And for her, she took the power and the energy of that great I am that she is, that she knew she was in that moment, that you are, that we all are. When we carve out a little bit of time in our life to study this, to know it, to feel it, to own it, so we can access it, she took all of that anger, and instead of turning it into bitter resentment, she locomoted herself in the direction of the person who would have her crouch. And in her case, with her still small voice at work, and it's always situation specific, it was the right thing to do, because on that day, she discovered that from up on deck, there was a power in her greater than she had ever known herself to be. And it was real, and it was palpable. You sit in these rooms and you hear this, and they're nice stories. I mean, they're nice, right? I mean, they're good stories. These are all good stories. There's a leaf story, and there's a boat story, and there's something for everybody. If you like leaves, there's something for you. If you're a sailor type person or a marine biologist, you'll like the water images. Then there's the son of the king. Then there's the son of the shepherd. So any shepherds in the room, somewhere you're gonna find yourself in all these stories, and you're gonna connect and say, oh my God, that's me. That's me. If that's them, that's me. Because the facts give us knowledge, stories give us wisdom. And you know what the wisdom is? It's the wisdom of our own soul. We're reminded, oh my God, that's who I am. See, this is a muscle we build. It's a muscle we build. Knowing who we are. Now that we've spent the last weeks talking about who we're not and the choice we can make, we need to make a decision who we're going to be. And not just because we say, okay, I'm going to do this. We do it because each and every day we begin to take an action that demonstrates how much we want to do this. And you'll notice that in every path, every philosophy, every teaching, every 12-step program, they always talk about morning. You ever notice that? They don't say stop, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon or when you have time at your coffee break by the water cooler. What they say is first thing in the morning, and they say it for a reason. Because first thing in the morning says to life, this is first. This is so important to me. I'm going to check in here first, right? Now, we bump into something because first sometimes means we turn on the radio. First sometimes means we turn on the television. First sometimes means we open the New York Times or go online and do it, whatever we do. That's first. When we change that up, and it's a simple change, I cannot begin to tell you how much is going to change for you. I mean, if you want to be absolutely out of your mind crazy, I can tell you something that I've done in classes for 20 years that will radically alter the course of your life. But we will probably have half of you here next week when you hear what it is. Cheryl will have put out too many chairs. The room will be cavernous. And when we say welcome to happy hour, we'll be saying welcome to happy hour, because there are going to be 8 people in the room. But I'm going to say it anyway, because we can always get a smaller room. And it'll be a little less expensive, to rent. So we'll save some money there, I think. It's not a bad idea. So here's the idea. The idea is, if everything you listen to tells you who you're not, if everything you listen to tells you who you're not, it tells you might as well crouch. It tells you we are crouchers. It tells you we are victims of circumstance. It tells you you should be thankful for what you have because other people don't have as much as you have. If the whole world in its forgetfulness tells you you're the son of a shepherd, and you should be grateful for it. You're a wave, but we all are. And what can you do? That's life. And you know what? There's a better life coming because one day the Messiah is coming and we'll be saved. Or if we're not saved, we'll go to heaven and we can play the harp. I mean, we have options. But none of those options talk about right here and right now. If what we're tuning into is making us tune out from hearing the voice that would have us go up on deck, that keeps us in a corner crouching, that keeps us in a corner crouching, surviving, forget growing, and forget growing vigorously. If that's the first voice we listen to, and that is the voice of the world, that's not to say the world is bad. I'm saying the world is telling us that's who we are. Read anything. It is an endless list of stories of victimization. Bad things happening to good people. That's what sells papers. I don't have trouble with that as the bottom line for the media. I have trouble with that as us reading that and thinking that's our bottom line. Our bottom line, your bottom line for a way of life that works, and I mean radically works, not just tweaking, radically changes things. We got to be able to hear that voice, that I am, that greatness, holding to that greatness. We got to be able to make the choice to do that first thing in the morning, which means the first place we go is to that voice. We do not turn on the radio. We do not turn on the news. We do not open the papers. And don't worry, you won't be, ignorant in a week of what goes on. Believe me, people will tell you if there's bad news, they'll call you. They'll email you. Did you know a plane blew up in Ohio in 17 feet? You didn't know that? What? Where's your TV? You don't have one? I'll give you one. I have an extra. People love to give you that news. If we can't hear our own voice, if we can't hear it, if we cannot hear that great I am in us, it's as if we don't have it. It's like having money in the bank, but you forgot that you had a bank account. So you got it, but you can't use it. You can't live off it. It's very nice because the bank is getting interest off of your money, but you're not. What if your first stop every morning was to take that marvelous teacher's idea? She was a Korean teacher, and I don't know her name. And she said, in the morning, and you can adjust this number, sit down and take 50 breaths. You don't like that number? Too scary? Take 20. Don't like that number? Take 10. What she's saying is sit and take 10 breaths. And in those 10 breaths, in that silence, you're going to hear a voice that you don't often hear in the world that is so loud. You want to go even further than that? What would happen if for 90 days or the rest of our 12 weeks together, you did something, so bizarre, people would just, say, what up with you, right? What if you turned the TV off? I had a class, and it happened to be our most popular class, where that we introduced in the third week. And it was amazing. You would have thought, somebody got up and they put their hand up, and you remember this. He said, I am so nauseous right now. When you said turn the TV off, I feel like I could vomit. Right? This is a big, beautiful guy, and he was a mess. He looked seasick at the idea of turning the TV off. And you know why? Because when you turn the TV off, you're going to hear another voice. And you're going to hear it right beneath the silence that we're afraid of listening to, because the silence is deafening. And I'm telling you, it's not. The silence is filled, not with nothingness, with creative emptiness, with the voice that was given to us, that speaks of the greatness which we are, that when we tap into it, not only tells us to go up on deck, takes our hand and leads us up on deck so we can see the bigger picture of our life. And we can't do that until we turn down the volume on all the other voices we are listening to all throughout the day. The first time I walked into a New York City cab, I've been here 30 years, and I saw they had TV. They had TV in the cab. Steam was, it's like even here, I can't just have a moment to just sit here, and I took out my bright red lipstick and I put it all over the screen like a 6-year-old. And not only wasn't I remorseful, it was like, hee. I was so happy in the back seat to have defaced something with lipstick, of course, not like with pen or a permanent marker. And it was a good Chanel lipstick, I'll have you know. That's like a $30 lipstick, because I thought there is not one place where we are allowed to be still and hear something that will actually get us up off the floor from crouching before a world that tells us we're the son of a shepherd, that we're nothing more than a little wave, and what do we know? And the more you hear that from every direction, and you do in the world, the less you can hear the voice inside of you that tells you who you are. Inside of every tempest, the poet says, is something like a navel, a hole through which a gull can fly in silence. We live in a wild and amazing world of 10,000 distractions, and some of us are very important people. Oh my God, and you know who you are. And you know what? If we don't know, you'll probably tell us. So how do we turn down? The businessmen have a name for it. The businessmen, because they recognize they cannot come up with new ideas with the volume of the world up so loud. So businessmen have given it a name, and they call it a low information diet. If we turn down the volume of the world, what we're doing by default is turning up the volume on the part of our nature that knows it's the boat and life's the ocean. And we have been prepared for whatever is brought to us. And she ran after that man. And a police followed her, and they caught him. And I know her. It is the last time she ever crouched before anybody. It was over. That storyline was over. We have a part of our nature that requires us to build that muscle, that pipeline to the part of ourself that knows who we are. Take time in the morning, even if it's 15 minutes, a quarter of an hour, 15 minutes. That is like 1% of your whole day. Give yourself 1% to begin to turn down the volume around you and go first to turn up the volume within you. Sit for 10 minutes and breathe. 10 breaths. It doesn't take long. 10 breaths. You're going to stop. Every second breath, a thought's going to come in about something. You know that. We both know you're not going to make 10 breaths in a row. It's not going to happen. It's nearly inhumanly possible unless you live in a cave in the Himalayas. But you're sitting for the 10 seconds, and for those 10 seconds, you're quieting down the part of your nature that tells you through a broken little porthole that this is all that life is, meaning this is all that you are. And you're turning up the voice that tells you the ocean is who you are. You are a wave individualized as the ocean. This is the ocean expressing as you. The greatness, holding to the great form, is holding to the great idea of who you are. And when you begin to hold to that energy, that strength, that big picture begins to enable you to walk out your door as the person you have always dreamed of being, thinking one day you might be that person, when in fact you're that person right now. There is no such thing as becoming. You already are what it is you think you want to become. It's here. Thich Nhat Hanh says this, in your 10 breaths, if you need something to say, here's what we said, thy will be done. Some people have liked it, some people haven't. Don't use it if you don't like it. Thich Nhat Hanh says, try this. I have arrived. I am home. In those 10 breaths, I have arrived. I am home. You don't like that? Use this. I am here now. Plant yourself in the place that you are, so when you take 10 breaths, you are where you belong, where the truth about you lives. Pick one and do it. 10 breaths each morning. You go there first, so that you may cement this relationship with who you are and continue to build the muscle of it, so never again will you find yourself crouching, not because life did it to you, crouching because you forgot who you were. Enough said. Thank you.